Okay, and starting the webinar in 2, 3, 2, 1.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the virtual Empower Her Long-Term Participation in Sport event. My name is Mika Francis. My pronouns are she and her, and I'll be your host for today. We're going to be getting started with a quick warm-up, so if you can get some free space and some water, Joey will be taking us through some activity.
Hey everyone. So you're gonna want to be standing for this. You just angle it better. So we're gonna start off with some high knees. You can go fast if you want, but you can also go slow. So we're just gonna do high knees for about 20 seconds. 10 more seconds. And we are done our high knees. Now we're going to do some butt kicks. You can also do them fast like this, or you can do them slow. So we're going to do that for 20 seconds. And 10 more seconds. And perfect. Now we're going to start with some hip openers. So what you're going to do is you're going to lift your leg up and go around. So up and around. And you can do both legs or you can just do one. So we're going to do that for another 20 seconds. So and 10 more seconds. Perfect. Now we're going to hold our leg. So your knee's going to be up like this, and you're going to rotate your ankle. We're going to do that for 20 seconds. And your next leg. If you need a balance, you can hold onto a wall or the chair in front of you. And perfect. So now we're just gonna focus on our arms. So we're gonna swing them around for about 20 seconds, loosen up our joints. Another 10 seconds. Perfect. Now we're going to focus on our arms again. So we're going to do some small circles. You can go forwards or backwards. And you're slowly going to get bigger. I'm going to do this for 10 seconds. You're going to get wider. And then you're going to slowly get smaller. And then you're going to change direction. So I'm just like going backwards now or forwards for another 10 seconds. Slowly get bigger. Bigger and bigger. And now we're going to swing our right arm into our left arm and we're going to stretch that. So we're going to hold that for about 10 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Then we're going to start the next arm and hold that for 10 seconds. If it burns, that's a good thing. 5 more seconds. Perfect. So now we're going to do some lunges. So we're just going to stretch a little bit. So you can do whatever side you want to start with first. We're going to do both legs. So we're going to hold that for 10 seconds. And then 5 more seconds. And then we are done. Thank you guys so much for doing a quick warm up with me. I hope you guys are feeling energized and ready for the rest of this session, but thank you guys so much and enjoy your time. Back to you, Mika.
Thank you so much for that wonderful warm-up, Jovi. Okay, so good afternoon and welcome again to MLSC Launchpad's Empower Her Long-Term Participation in Sport event. My name is Mika Francis. My pronouns are she and her, and I'll be your moderator for today. I work at MLSC Launchpad as a youth mentor, where I basically support my youth in any way that I can. And I also work full-time as a recreational therapist at my family's company called Functional Mind and Body. I am super excited to be here and hear from our wonderful speakers about how to leverage my own participation in sport. Because just like a lot of you guys, I'm still figuring my life out, and I'd love to hear about the different opportunities that are out there. So today's event will be focusing on the value of self-identified girls staying in the game by highlighting speakers who participated in sport as youth, have remained active in their sport, and are transferring those skills over into their career. We'll be discussing how to launch your career or interest in the sport and entertainment industry by highlighting some amazing women-identified leaders in the sector. Before we get started, I would like to begin with a quick land acknowledgement. So, although we are meeting virtually, it is important to acknowledge the land that we gather on. I acknowledge that MLSC Foundation, MLSC Launchpad, as well as myself on a personal level, stand in allyship with Indigenous and Black communities in their active struggles for social justice. MLSC Launchpad and MLSC Foundation are situated upon the traditional territories that include the Wendat, the Anishinaabe Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Mississauga of the Credit First Nations, the Métis, and the Métis Nation. We acknowledge that some of you may be participating on different lands, so please feel free to share your own land acknowledgements using the chat feature. As we come together today to discuss how to continue our work together to help youth reach their potential, we must recognize that this acknowledgement is merely words and that the only thing that will make it meaningful is when it's coupled with action. What's happening right now in Afghanistan, Ethiopia, Palestine, Israel, Yemen, Russia, and Ukraine are truly devastating, and we need to find different ways, and we need to acknowledge the fact that women in these parts of the world may suffer in different ways unique to womanhood. It is important to talk about these issues as often as possible, ensure that these women and the countries that they belong to are not forgotten. It's also important that we stand with our Indigenous communities and all other marginalized groups so that they can feel us rooting for them and supporting them daily. So today, I ask you guys to think about other ways that you can take the learnings from this land acknowledgement into your community and empower self-identified girls to lead the future. I would also like to take this time to acknowledge that we did just finish up Black History Month, so I hope everyone got some learning in and took the time to celebrate. I also wanted to say that this month is Gender Equity Month, and that, as we all know, today is International Women's Day, so thank you for coming and sharing some time with us. So now we're going to move on to the agenda. We have some great stuff planned for you today. We just had a wonderful warm up with Coach Jovi. Thank you again. And we are going to go through some introductions so I can get to know all of you wonderful people a little bit more. And then I'm going to tell you a little bit more about MLSC Launchpad. Then we're going to get into the main segment of our event with our panelists. And then at the end, hopefully we'll have some time for a Q&A session, a survey, and a challenge that you or your class can submit to win an awesome prize. There'll be more information to come about that in the chat. Now we're going to go over how we can participate in the event. So I'm going to go over some rules of engagement. Even though we can't see your lovely faces today, we still want to see you participate in the event by using our engagement tool. Today we'll be using Menti, which is an interactive tool for participants to engage with during our event. And if you have a cell phone or can open a browser, please log in to the website and enter the code on the screen to engage with us. You can see it at the top here. And you can also show speakers your love by clicking reactions or answering some questions. Please also make sure to switch your view to active speaker view. This event will be recorded so that folks who are unable to join us can participate at a later time. But your answers to questions are private, so everything that you say will be kept safe here. So if you can, please take out your phones and scan the QR code or enter the code below, and you should see this slide. So now we're going to test out Menti a little bit. And I'm going to ask you guys a quick question. You guys can enter it here. Tell me your name and the school that you are from. I see Natalie Wilson. Thank you, Natalie, for giving me an answer. I see Dejla and Donald A. Wilson. There's a lot of people from Wilson here. Shania from David Lewis Public School, Evan from Marydale Public School. Thank you guys all for giving me your answers. And then our next question is, what sport do you enjoy playing, and can you guys see yourself playing it lifelong? Wait for some answers come in. Ooh, hockey, there's a lot of hockey players. Soccer, and no, you don't see yourself playing it lifelong, that's unfortunate. Hockey, and yes, basketball, badminton, volleyball, water polo, basketball, volleyball. There's a lot of different cool sports here. Swimming, yes, I love swimmers, very cool. Cricket, very cool. Golf, I was, what is it? I think the 2014 TDS Beach Golf Champion. So I find that super cool that there are kids playing that. Volleyball, swimming, hockey, lots of different cool sports. Thank you guys all for engaging with us. So now I'm going to move on and tell you guys a little bit about MLSE Launchpad. We are supported by Maple Leaf Sports Entertainment professional sports team. So if you come to Launchpad, you'll see all of the different sports teams repped all around our space. And we are a 42,000 square foot sport for development facility in Toronto that provides free programs for youth ages 6 to 29. And a little bit more about Empower Her. So we try and create a space to address topics that are specific to the needs of self-identified girls through sport. And we also connect girls to women leaders in the sport and entertainment industry, kind of like what we're doing here today. So before we begin, I just want to remind everyone to have active speaker view on so that you can see all of our lovely panelists. And please remember to click the reaction buttons to show your speakers some love as they answer some important questions. Also, hopefully we'll have some space at the end of our panel to answer some questions from the audience. So if you guys have any questions for our speakers, please type them in the chat throughout the event and we'll keep track of them. All right, let's begin with the panel. But before we start the questions, I'd like to introduce our panelists for today. We have Kalea, who's a kinesiology student and soccer player. We have Anna, who's the coordinator of community engagement at MLSE Foundation. We have Michelle, who's a certified athletic therapist at Ryerson University. And we have Wumi, who's an assistant coach for the Queens women's basketball team and the founder of Hooper's Loop. Awesome, let's get into some questions. So this is the first round of questions, and the first one is for all of you guys. It is, what is your current role and what skills do you integrate from the sport that you grew up playing into this role? Kalea, you can go first if you don't mind.
Hi, everyone. Happy International Women's Day. My name is Kalea. My current role at Launchpad is I'm currently on the Youth Advisory Council. So it's just a group of youth that meet every month to kind of integrate and kind of help Launchpad develop, coming from a youth perspective. And the sport I play is soccer. Some skills that I can integrate from my sport into my current role at Launchpad is kind of just perseverance, understanding like your intelligence and your power as a woman, your voice, understanding that needs to be heard no matter where you're from and what sport you play.
Thank you so much, Kalea. That is very relatable, I think, to a lot of people in our audience. And I also saw that there were a lot of soccer players on the Menti responses. So I think that they'll be able to relate to you very well. Next, can we have Anna answer the same question?
Sure. Hey, everyone. Scano. My name's Anna. I am the coordinator on our community investment team at MLSE Foundation. My job currently is working on some of our multi-sport court refurbishment, so building basketball courts around Ontario in different neighborhoods. My connection to sport is through basketball. I played all sports growing up, but I actually ended up playing college basketball for Humber. And my journey through sport has been one that was just constant effort and joy throughout. And I think like it led me to some really cool places that I never thought it would take me. I think it taught me a lot about emotional intelligence and like regulating emotions. And I'm really, I have a weird relationship with the word resilience. I think it's used a lot in like well-meaning ways, but I think understanding that I don't always have to be resilient, and sometimes taking care of yourself is just as important as pushing through or being resilient. So I just want to say to anyone who is struggling or has struggled, especially in sport, feeling like you're emotionally also working really hard, that's really important to take care of your emotions. Yeah, so that's some of the things that I've learned through my participation in sport. I'm also from Six Nations Reserve, Ogehoe, I'm Cayuga Nation, and I also want to acknowledge the lands that I come from and the people that I belong to, and I love to see others doing that as well.
I really liked your piece on self-care. I think as women, we're always pushed to just be the strongest and hardest and push through everything. So yeah, I really agree with that self-care piece as well. Michelle, would you like to answer?
Yes, again, thanks for having me for this event. My name is Michelle Bell. My current role, I work for Ryerson University as a certified athletic therapist, in addition to working with Team Canada and OBA, which is Ontario Basketball. I would say that my connection has always been through basketball. While I grew up playing a number of sports, basketball has always been what I consider my first love. And through sport, you know, I've been able to further develop my career as an athletic therapist. And, you know, a few characteristics that I deem to be extremely important in my role and working with athletes would just be leadership roles or leadership qualities, and you know, having attention to detail, and you know, also emphasizing that self-care is super important, especially when you're working within a team environment, while you're working with athletes and coaches and support staff. I think a lot of people forget about that self-care piece, as well as health and wellness, and the importance of developing meaningful relationships in a close-knit team setting.
Thank you for that. And again, touching on the self-care piece, as you guys can see, that is extremely important for women these days. And I think it always has been, but now we get to actually focus on it, which is great. Wumi, would you like to answer?
Absolutely. My name is Juania Gumbietti. I am from Pickering. I'm from the Nigerian Jamaican descent. And I'm very, very happy to be here with everyone. I'm currently the lead assistant coach at Queen's University in Kingston. Basketball has been a major vehicle in my life, from point A to Z and beyond. Was a former pro player in Europe and professional coach and so on and so forth. And I've learned a lot of things throughout my journey. Some things being, you know, a few people talked about self-care, and that's a big one. Learning how to manage your body and your own mental well-being. And it's kind of hard to give to a team or to a group if you're empty. So making sure that you're taking care of yourself and managing your time, managing yourself. When you have a lot of plates that you're spinning, you want to make sure they all stay on the pole. So just time management was a big thing that I took away from playing sport at a high level and transitioning into my role today. And lastly, and I think this is difficult for a lot of people, we're all just trying to figure it out, is staying focused and limiting the distractions. And when you're playing in sports, sometimes there's a lot of things going on, people banging pans and stuff, and you got to stay dialed in. And transitioning into the role that I'm in, there's a lot of stuff going on. We get into the scroll and you get lost in the matrix. So staying focused is another thing. And those are a few things that I've taken away from my experience, my role in sports, and what I'm doing and using right now.
Thank you, Wumi. As you guys can see, there are so many cool characteristics that you can take from being a sports player and put into your career. That focus piece is so key. And I think not even just in careers, school, and anything that you're in. So thank you for sharing that. My next question is going to go to Kalea, and it is, why did you choose kinesiology as your major of study, and how does your role at MOC Launchpad influence what you're learning at school? Additionally, what would you like your career to look like? I know that was a lot, so if you need me to repeat anything, you can just ask.
That was a lot, but it's good. I think I got it. Why did I choose kinesiology as a major of study? For me, I have a huge interest into physiotherapy, and then also like there's multiple things that you can do with a kinesiology degree. You can get into law school, get into med school, start your own practice. For me, physiotherapy has been like a big interest. But then I'm like, but like in university, that's kind of like the time where you get to like figure out like how you can use a degree or what you actually want to do with like the rest of your life. And there's definitely a lot of interest for me alongside physiotherapy. There's kinesiology teacher. I know for me in grade 12, I had a kinesiology teacher and program, and it was really interesting. So I wanted to look more into that. Kinesiology teacher, there was also, sorry, I lost my train of thought. There was kinesiology teacher, the physiotherapy, and then also connecting into Launchpad and working around youth and seeing like how many like young girls are so interested in playing sports. Connecting it to like what I want to see in the future is more representation of females in sport and women in sport. And I know, you know, you turn on the TV, you go on TikTok, you go on Instagram, we see a lot of male representation in sport, but not a lot of female representation in sport. And I think for me, my future in career, my future in sport and integrating it into like work and life is also trying to work more harder at seeing what we can do to make sure that women in sport is more televised. So that's been like a big thing for me alongside kinesiology.
Thank you for sharing. My sister also actually studied kinesiology, and we went to the same school. So I was always like looking at her books, and it is a very cool program for anybody who's interested. And like Kalea said, there are so many different places that you can take it. So thank you for sharing that. The next question is for Anna. What motivates you the most about your profession, and how do you make the connection between your experiences growing up in sport and your current role?
Yeah, so I think a lot of what I do now is a full circle moment, because when I was growing up, like I would just find any court I could play on. I would find any like sports space that I could have like my own space in that wasn't crowded, and I would spend so much of my time there. For me, that was like very, very important in my life. That kept me going through some hard times, some transitions. I moved a lot when I was growing up. So I think something that was always consistent was playing sports and being active and having that as like a fundamental part of my happiness and my joy and my passion. And I think like that's the case for athletes. Like I think we just love what we do, and whatever sport, whatever activity that is, it's really, really healing. And so I think now I've had experience coaching little ones, I've had experience playing, I've had experience just being a fan of sport. And I think at this point now I get to do some cool things, and like I have access to some important like spaces and decisions, and I can put my input into those things because I have that lived experience of wanting things to be better for myself, but also for community. I don't want anyone to feel like they can't access sports spaces or there's discrimination when they do access those spaces. I want those spaces to be considerate of culture, considerate of spirituality, considerate of identity. I think as like a queer person, there's a lot of things that you're up against and that are imposed on you that you have to fight through. And I think my job now, I'm able to do things that influence the young folks that would have gone through what I went through, but hopefully they don't have to go through as much in the same ways because of decisions that I'm able to put my input into. And I think like for a lot of my life, that's been like a huge theme where just like fighting up against systems and stuff like that, that put a lot of barriers and a lot of roadblocks in your way. And I think as a woman, that's just a common thing. And I think young girls have a lot of power in themselves, and they have a lot of just beauty in the way that we navigate the world. So that's like a huge theme through my life and has come to my current position.
Thank you for sharing that. I think it's so cool that, like you said, this is it seems very full circle. Very cool that you found such comfort in those spaces and now you're creating them for other young women. So thank you for sharing that. Our next question is going to go to Michelle. How did you get into the field that you're in now? And what are some intentional steps that you took to get there?
It's a great question. I almost don't have enough time to even say it, but I'll do my best to wrap it up in short few words. But growing up, again, I played a number of sports in high school, from basketball to tennis to soccer to volleyball to track and field, you name it, I played it. And unfortunately, at the age of 16, I actually tore my ACL. And at that time, this is literally like 20 years ago, makes me sound old, but 20 years ago, surgery was different. And the recovery time, the beauty of technology now and the advancement of medicine allows for a better return to activity when individuals suffer this injury. But nonetheless, in going to university, I elected not to pursue playing at the university level and focused on the books. And that was through also, again, support from my family, kind of pushed me through, but it wasn't easy. I never gave up sport though. I still played intramurals, but again, my drive was always there. I loved the game of basketball. And so then, went on to complete my degree in athletic therapy. But through that injury of being injured initially with the ACL, I had a chance to be exposed to amazing therapists who showed me what it meant to receive great therapy. And I think that's how I model how I treat my athletes now. Overseeing 3 teams at Ryerson University. When someone gets injured, it's not only a physical injury, it's a mental injury. It weighs its toll on individuals. And the fact that I can relate to that, makes me that much more relatable to them. But, that's kind of how I got into doing what I did as far as being a therapist. I was given the opportunity to do my placement at Ryerson. And, a few years later, came back and got hired full time. Same thing with Canada basketball. I did a summer placement and they've kept me on ever since. It's been 10 plus years. So I'm doing something right. And a lot of people don't know this on the call, but that's how I met Wumi. Wumi was one of my athletes and, we've been great friends ever since. The next question of how do you, over some intentional steps? A huge part of that is networking and wanting to put more time to extra time to learn the skill and just shadow those who are doing a great job or who are seen as the best in the industry. And so I think a huge part of that, again, is for everyone to, if that's what you really want to do, you'll always make the time for it. And no one can stop you but yourself. So stay focused and you got it.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Michelle. And that is so cool. I did not know that you and Wumi are friends. Also, I really wanted to touch on the piece that you said about the mental aspect of being injured as an athlete. I think that a lot of people overlook how detrimental or painful that part of an injury can be. So very cool that you touched on that as well. My next question is for Wumi, actually. And it is, did you always see yourself in sport as an athlete representing Team Canada or being the founder of an organization that supports girls staying in sport? And then also, how do you share your experiences in the industry to motivate girls that you work with to stay in the game?
Hey, that's also a great question. So Did I see myself playing for Team Canada as a young girl? No, to be completely honest. And did I see myself founding an organization that helps and supports young girls? I can say yes to that. And was saying that I played the sport because I loved it, and whatever happened, happened. And I always tell people, you know, you do things because you love it and because you care and you're passionate about these things, and the road will somehow carve itself out for you. You know, so as long as you're doing good for yourself and doing good by others as well, then the rest will take care of itself. And you meet great people along the way. Some people in which become friends later on. Shout out to Michelle. And things just kind of work itself, like they just happen to work itself out. And today, ways in which, you know, my past, my experiences have panned itself out has just been through Hooper's Loop, my organization. Like I said, that supports young girls and helping them figure out the next steps in life, and bridging both their experiences in sports and how you can kind of make the connection between the basketball court or on the court, the field to life. I help them out by just being honest, and just sharing my raw experience. Not like there were pretty parts and glamorous parts, but there were some challenging moments and times, some including injuries, and just, you know, being away from family and stuff like that. But I continuously tell them and express the importance of just, you know, believing in yourself and believing that everything will take care of itself, as long as, again, as long as you're doing well by yourself and others. Through HL, my organization, we talk about, you know, different things like affirmations, things that we kind of think we might think are a bit cliche, but just self-talk is super important, and what you're speaking and thinking of yourself goes a very, very, very long way. And I just hope that everyone in this call believes thoroughly of the great light that they are, and they walk and honor the light that they stand in, because it radiates through themselves and towards other people. I hope I answered your question, but in short, everything kind of led to the next. Everything kind of led to the next.
Yes, you definitely did answer the question, and that was a beautiful quote about the radiation. So thank you. And I also really liked your point about not necessarily seeing yourself being crazy successful or anything like that. I feel like a lot of people might get really hooked on the idea of, hey, I want to be this, I want to be a star. But if you really just love your craft and you make sure you invest in yourself and you do well in it, I think that alone takes a lot of people to success. So thank you for mentioning that. Next, our question is going to go to Kalea, and it is, have you ever felt intimidated being a woman of color in your program? And how did you make sure that your voice was heard, whether it was in school, part-time work, or in your sport, in an industry that is typically led by cisgendered white men?
For me, have I ever felt intimidated being a woman of color in my program? I definitely, with the integration of, I think, social media in our generation, it's very easily, it's very easy to see like what the majority of, what the majority gender and color is in the big roles, in terms of like where my program leads to. But I think one thing that I like to understand and go by is that just because you can see like the lack of representation in wherever you are doesn't mean that you cannot, that doesn't mean that you cannot become like the representation that you want to see. And making sure that your voice is heard in school and work and in the sport you play is like understanding that where you are, whether it's school, whether it is at work, whether it is in sport, like your voice should always be valued no matter what you look like or who you are, as an athlete and as a Black athlete. it's extremely important. I don't think I've mentioned it before, but like I play for York's soccer team, and then I also play for the St. Kitts and Nevis national women's soccer team. So like I've like been around the world. I've played against like different countries and stuff like that, and it's extremely important to me for representation, for me to see the representation that I want to become, and then also to be like the positive representation that like younger girls can be. And in school, making sure that who you are and like what color you are, what you identify as, your voice is being heard. And if it's not being heard, making sure that you are in a place that like that you're being valued, especially in sport. Yeah, so I would say, I know mine's kind of short, but yeah, that's what I would say.
Thank you for sharing that. And I can definitely identify with being a woman of color in mostly white school and making sure that my voice is heard. I think the only thing I could add to that would be that, yeah, being yourself authentically in whatever space you are and recognizing that you do deserve to take up space wherever you are can help empower you to make sure that your voice is always heard. So again, thank you for sharing that. Our next question is for Anna. And it is, how did the lack of representation affect your decision to become a part of a sports company? And why do you think it's important to have more women in the sports industry?
So in terms of lack of representation, I think that's always something that comes up. It comes up in schooling. So I came up when I was at Humber for sport management. I would say like 90% of the program was cis white men or boys, young men. So I think like that's always something that comes up. Hard to find folks like me. And when you do, like that's the big thing for me, is always find your people wherever you are. And what your people look like depends on your identities or your multiple identities. So for me, that's finding other people that kind of vibe with in terms of like values and in terms of how we like work together. I think it's different when you work with folks that you don't really vibe with in that way because they don't understand your experiences. And I think especially for young girls and like non-binary and trans women, I think it's really important to find your people and find your allies and the folks that you can really lean on when you need support. I think the biggest part of that is like once you get into spaces that you might be one of the few in, just like holding that space and pulling others along with you as you move through it. I think like planting those seeds where no one can really deny your power and your value and your lived experience. It plants a seed for the next people who come. So I think like that's just a culturally like specific way that I move through life, and I bring that to my job because I can't separate who I am from what I do. That's just not something I'm willing to do or compromise in. So I think that's why it's really important to have more folks like us in sports industry, because once we plant those seeds, the next folks that come through, they have an easier time and they don't feel like they're really searching for that representation as much, hopefully, if we move in really meaningful ways.
Thank you for sharing that. I really agree with the idea of finding your people in whatever space that you're in. I think that can be such a powerful tool. And unfortunately, sometimes you may not be able to find people who look like you, but finding people who think the same way as you, like you said, who share similar values can be extremely empowering. And also, if you can't find absolutely, like if nobody in the space is thinking or moving like you do, then being that first person to think and move the way that you do can be so empowering for lots of other women and other marginalized groups to follow. So yeah, that was a great point, thank you. And our next question is going to be for Michelle. What are some of the stereotypes about who can do a physical labor job, like being an athletic therapist? And what has your experience been as a woman in the field? And what has been one of the biggest misconceptions that people have had about you and your ability to do your job?
That's a loaded question. I will focus though on one particular stereotype. Being a female and working with a male team, sports is typically considered male dominant space. And so when I first started working with the men's team, I went in with a mindset that I was going to ensure people focused on my skill rather than the fact that there was a female in the locker room. Also, I had a great amount of support from coaches to players who respected the space. And a lot of, you might hear things about what happens in a locker room or, within sport. They were very, very respectful from the get-go. And I think that helped to lay down the rules, the standard of what our team was going to represent. And that's a huge influence on how I was able to thrive in that environment. For individuals who don't have that, it creates another barrier to overcome. And unfortunately, until you're able to change that mindset of other individuals, you can only do so much, but the ones who are leading, the leaders within an organization, they're the ones who truly have to make that change. And so I was fortunate enough that stereotype that does exist, again, being a female in a male-dominated industry, it's been challenging, but at the same time, I never let that be the first thing that people judge me by. And I'm a true believer in that you determine how people will treat you. And again, it's not always easy, but you definitely have to lay down your standards, your rules on how you're going to approach situations. And, some of the biggest misconceptions is the fact that women can't hold their own in certain spaces. And I think I'd be the first one to say that my athletes know that, not saying they don't mess with me, but my standard is very high and I don't put up with anything. But I'm also doing that so that they know that the next individual who, whether female or male, but specifically for women, because I'm always, promoting women, is for them to know that they will also show that individual just the same respect as I would. Treat people how you want to be treated, and no one can limit your greatness.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I really loved your point about you determining how people treat you. And I think that you made a really good point for any of the allies who are sitting in this conversation about creating safer spaces for women to be able to do what they want to do. Like you said, it just makes it's not impossible for women to break down those barriers when men or other kinds of people put them up, but it does make your job a lot easier when that level of respect is expected and set out at the forefront. So thank you so much for sharing that. Our next question is going to go to Wumi, and it is, why is it important for more minority women to be in the field, and what can folks interested in coaching do to get some exposure in this field?
Okay. This is extremely important. Just seeing people that especially look like you. I think that that piece right there is huge. I'll share with you all that I am the first colored coach within the Queen's University women's basketball program. And yeah, appreciate it. And that right there is huge. I think part of believing in something is seeing it, whether you're physically seeing it or you're imagining it. And that second piece I think is much more important, believing in yourself that you can be the first, right? And coming to Queens, I was very nervous and I didn't know what to expect, but I believed in myself and my skills, similar to what Michelle just mentioned. And I knew that that would be enough to carry me through, and it has been doing great thus far. But from having someone in a position, from having, for example, me being in the position that I'm in, it then can open up doors for other people who also identify as people of color or as a minority. And the second question was, what would I tell folks interested in exploring coaching? I would say reach out to old coaches, reach out to anyone that's in and around the field. People are a lot more willing to help than I'm sure we even imagine. Oftentimes we get in our own ways, and I think it's important for us to, get out of our way and just knock on the door. Just pick up the phone, give someone a call, shoot them a message. People are a lot more accessible these days. So pop in their DMs, whatever the case may be, but just reach out to people.
I really like that point about us getting our own way sometimes. I know that I do that all the time in terms of I want to reach out to somebody, but I'm like, will they want to help? I think, especially in this day and age, women are so pro supporting other women, and we need to take advantage of that. So I do see some people in the chat saying that you can reach out to them. But yeah, I would definitely say get out of your own head. And if you want to do something, find the way to do it, and find a woman who you admire who's already doing it. And if not, you have to be the first, unfortunately, but you will create a way for other women. So for our next round of questions, because we are running out of time, I'm going to ask that we keep our responses hopefully to just a minute if possible. So it's going to be really short. And our first question is going to Kalia again. And it is, why do you still play sports as a student? And what advice can you give to self-identified girls in our audience who are actively playing sport now and either want to be a varsity athlete or keep up with their sports?
Why do I still play sports as a student? For me, it's like sports has always kind of been a part of my life since I was younger. I play sports up until this point because like when I was younger, there were like a lot of negative influences as to me staying in sport, as to sport being too masculine for a female, as sport like as like not as many like girls were into sports, and that wasn't kind of like the girly thing to do as a younger kid. So there was so many opportunities for me to like stop doing sport, but I continued with it because when I was younger, it gave me that sense of purpose, and it gave me that sense of love and passion and kind of power that the outside world wasn't giving me. And I think that for anybody who is younger, who still wants to do sport, like if it gives you some type of love and kind of gives you like a drive, I'd say to just continue it. It has like opened my eyes up to like so many opportunities as I've grown like older. And again, like I just wish there was like somebody older to tell me to keep doing it and like remind me of all the positives, because like I said, the negative world, especially with like the integration of social media, can make you feel like it's more of a masculine, more of like a negative thing, like more like a negative thing in the female view and a women's view, but definitely it's definitely not. If it gives you passion, if it gives you some type of purpose, if it can help you in some type of way mentally, definitely still continue it. It will definitely benefit you in the long run in terms of your mental health, your physical health, and even your emotional health.
Thank you for sharing that. And I really agree with your point on not letting people tell you that participating in sports is a masculine thing. I think we all need to remember that that was an idea created by men, and we do not want to be following that anymore. I know people even get into it in terms of fitness and not wanting to look a certain way. We need to remember that women come in all shapes and sizes, and they can do whatever they want to. So thank you for sharing that. Our next question goes to Anna, and it is, what are some barriers that came up in your student or youth journey playing sports? And what are some things that you did to overcome those barriers that you would like to share with the audience?
Yeah, I just had a thought on the masculinity piece, and I just like, I also think that masculinity isn't just for women. Like, I think I present pretty masculine, and I think that's a part of who I am as a woman. So I think it's also beautiful to like put that thought in your mind that it's okay if you want to look masculine, or if that makes you feel powerful, strong, vulnerable, like all those beautiful things that make up who you are. I think that's also beautiful. But yeah, some of the barriers, I think like the biggest one was not understanding mental health issues, especially from like a culturally relevant viewpoint. I think being one of the few Indigenous athletes at Humber, it was definitely not something that was understood, how I was dealing with anxiety, depression, started to have panic attacks, and I didn't understand what that meant. But I realized that like addressing it and healing it could only really be done from like an Indigenous perspective and worldview and way of living. So I think understanding who you are and what helps you through your athlete and sport journey, and taking care of your heart and your spirit, those are things that helped me overcome because I learned how to understand what helps me through those things. I think everyone has their own things that carry them through, whether it's spiritually, whether it's through community. That's also huge. So I think like finding that connection to self and to community, when you can lean on that, you can overcome those barriers in a really, really powerful way.
Thank you for sharing. And again, I really like your point on the taking care of your heart and your spirituality. I think as an athlete, everyone really focuses on your physical health, your physical well-being, and not a lot of people are checking for what's going on in your heart and your head. So yeah, knowing what works for you, I think can be extremely beneficial there. Thank you for mentioning that. And our next question is going to go to Michelle, and it is, who were your biggest supporters as you were playing your sport or coming up in your career? And what would you recommend to the allies in our audience do to support or encourage self-identified girls staying in sports?
Yeah, I mean, I'll say from my day ones, my parents, my family, they are the reason why I do what I do. And but I would also say, you know, I have a number of mentors in my life who are open and honest. We have great conversations. And I make sure that I connect with individuals who have gone through experiences because, you know, they can actually relate to what I've been going through or what I will face in the future. But the important is that they are a voice of reason and they're able to kind of give you a different perspective on certain situations. So mentorship, I think, is just key or has been key in my personal life. And then what would I recommend to allies, which would be to invest in women, you know, pour into women and the females in your life, become mentors to the next generation, as well as, you know, providing opportunities in the forms of placement or internships so that we can actually develop women and the girls of tomorrow to get more involved in the sport industry.
Thank you for mentioning that. And thank you for mentioning family. I like that you also mentioned mentors and family because not everyone does have a supportive family, but there is always somewhere that you can find that support. So thank you for giving our audience some options. Our next question is going to Wumi, and it is, how do you support girls in the transition to post-secondary athletics? And what are some recommendations that you can give to self-identified girls in our audience to help them stay engaged in sport throughout post-secondary?
Yes. So to start, like how I support them is just like I said before, just being honest. If ever there's any questions or concerns about what's ahead, like I'm an open book. I use my social media as I could be a little bit better on those platforms. So I use that sporadically to kind of give glimpses of the journey and hopefully some things resonate. And as far as staying involved at the post-secondary level, I mean, this just kind of just opened, I just recently noticed how many opportunities there are within athletic facilities to just stay engaged that way. Just looking for opportunities to, whether it's home events or whatever type of departments there are within athletics, like exploring opportunities there. You can also, you know, join intramural teams. There are tons of different clubs and organizations that are ran throughout universities that I'm sure are available. So just like explore all the options, because I'm sure there are things that throughout all these different institutions that support female identified students wanting to continue their journeys in sports. So just continue to knock on doors, and you'll find some opportunities throughout.
Thank you for sharing that. And I really like what you said about finding more opportunities. I feel like in this day and age and going forth, there will be more things coming out specifically to support female athletes trying to continue their way in sports. So it is about looking for and searching for those opportunities. And that is a lot of hard work. But yeah, there is hope for us in the future. So I wanted to thank all of you guys for sharing your amazing stories. They were extremely inspiring. And I would like to hear a little bit from our audience. We won't have a lot of time at the end of this session to take any questions, but please send your questions to us and we will make sure that we answer them in email form. Now we can move on to Menti to actually hear from you guys. So I want to know, are any of you guys interested in pursuing a career in sport? I see some yeses, some maybes. Ooh, that's a lot of responses. Yes, I can see that some of us might need some more information, and that's totally fine. Guess what? If you keep coming to these Empower Her events, you'll get a lot more information and resources to help you make that decision. And our next question is, what are 3 words that you could use to describe this event? Please be kind. 3 words that you might use to describe this event. Hockey. Fun. Okay, I like that. Thank you very much. Empowering, interesting, powerful, helpful, magical. Wow, you guys are coming with a very flavorful language. I love it. Excellent. Sorry, it's moving around a lot. It's a little hard for me to read. But thank you guys so much for your responses. Now that we're near the end of the event, we have a survey that we would like you guys to fill out so you can let us know what you thought of today's event. The link is in the chat, or you can take a picture of the QR code. We also wanted to remind you that we will be sending you a challenge for you to work on either as a class or individually about today's conversation. And if you complete the challenge, you could be entered in a draw to win a really cool prize. We also have a few more Empower Her events coming up throughout the school year on topics like non-traditional sport careers and building positive relationships in sport. So please keep an eye out for those coming your way. And we wanted to share that on Mondays at MLSE Launchpad, the nights are exclusively reserved for self-identified girls programming. And we have programs like multi-sport, open gym, and girl in real life, where we touch on topics that matter to girls like self-esteem, leadership, mentorship, and we use sport to explore all of those. So if you're interested, please register or reach out to us at info@mlsclaunchpad.org, or you can just stop by 259 Jarvis Street and we would be happy to give you a tour and tell you more about our different programs. I just really wanted to thank our speakers for coming out today and sharing so much knowledge with us. So thank you, Kalea, Anna, Michelle, and Wumi. We really appreciate you taking the time to come out on International Women's Day and speak to all of us. And I also want to thank our audience for showing up, attending, participating, and being a part of today's event and conversation about empowering self-identified girls and seeing more representation in the sports and entertainment industry. Lastly, I wanted to thank the MLSE Launchpad Girl Squad team for putting this all together. And I wanted to leave you guys with a quote that is, behind every successful woman is a tribe of other successful women who have her back. And that's just to say that as women, we have to continue building each other up and supporting one another, because every one of us who ends up being successful creates a new path for other women to follow suit. And that's so important, as we've seen here today. So yeah, that's all I have to say. Thank you for participating. Stay healthy, stay positive, and hopefully we'll see you guys next time. Bye, friends. Thanks for coming.